Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to an exciting episode of Hype Podcast Series, your gateway to the ever-evolving world of immersive experience. I'm your intrepid host, Pete Bailey, and today's adventure promises to be nothing but extraordinary. Get ready to explore the forefront of innovation as we set sights on transformative realm of ProAV technology. On this podcast episode, be prepared to be amazed and enlightened as we explore the boundless potentials of immersive experiences with Mr. Phil Martin from the global giant that is PTS Consultants. You've got places all over the world, haven't you? Good morning, Phil.
We have indeed, yes. Yeah, we've got about 12 offices globally. So
there we go. See, global, absolute giant you guys are. We'll uncover how ProAVs' ingenious solutions are revolutionizing the way end customers face their challenges across different sectors. So get ready to be inspired and discover the limitless horizons of technology-driven transformations. Our extraordinary guest will be able to help you in this eye-opening adventure as we unravel the secrets and unveil the wonders that lie within the world of ProAV. And without further ado, let's dive deep into this enthralling episode where innovation takes center stage and the possibilities know no bounds. In the riveting episode, we will be shifting our focus from the groundbreaking impact of ProAV on end customer challenges across a diverse amount of industries, from retail, hospitality to B2B and countless other sectors. The fusion of sight and sound opens doors to unparalleled possibilities. We've invited a distinguished ProAV industry consultant, Mr. Phil Martin, to join us on this journey. A true expert in harnessing the potential of audiovisual solutions. Throughout our conversation, we'll discover how ProAV has become a driving force in empowering industries to conquer their most pressing obstacles, whether it's enhancing communication or creating unforgettable experience. The role of ProAV in solving end customer challenges is nothing short of remarkable. Good morning, Phil.
Good morning, Pete.
I'm glad that's over. How are things today?
They're very good, thank you. Yes, obviously fully refreshed after a long weekend, so can't complain yourself.
Absolutely brilliant. Yep, loved it. It was a great weekend. So let's dive straight in. What are some of the most pressing challenges faced by institutions, blue chip companies, B2B, and how does ProAV innovation help overcome these hurdles these days?
I think a lot of it is the ability to be able to, manage multiple systems, bring that collaboration together in the various different hybrid working styles that we now have since the of the pandemic, and how that then is kind of empowering the users of those companies to digest more information, learn more about what the business is doing, how that brings them more into the meeting spaces, digesting information when they're just moving around the campus, for example. We see it a lot, and especially with sustainability elements, which I believe we'll get onto a bit later, but it's bringing all that together and how you present that back to them in a digestible manner.
So sorry, this is not one of the questions that I was going to ask. So currently at the moment, how are you guys looking at the hybrid environments that we're now having to work in with regards to the ProAV side of it within, the B2B end user people?
No, absolutely. It's about trying to give you the same experience, whether you're on a laptop, a smart device of some sort, a tablet or a phone, or sitting in a large, fully equipped meeting room. Facial tracking seems to be more prevalent now, and obviously using microphones that are obviously tracking the voices using the multi-sensor arrays is definitely more on the checklist for our users now, because they want everyone to have that seamless experience, and also bringing it to people that are working in a different way, maybe someone who's neurodiverse or something like that, and making them part of it and feel more included.
Just going on to another wee bit of a question here. So how's the modern AV technology being integrated now into the workspace? to create more efficient and collaborative environments?
So not just having your standard traditional meeting rooms, they still play a purpose in most of the spaces that we work within, but having more informal settings, huddle booth type ones that have integrated screens that maybe are touch screens, so you can do your marking up and presenting content to a small group of people, brainstorming into that, and then being able to share that out collaborative, there's a word I can't say, collaboratively to a wider group, which then obviously helps stop having pointless meetings or meetings for the sake of meetings. It's getting that information kind of harnessed and rounded off before it goes to the larger people and they can sit in these smaller huddle type ones. It's about making larger spaces, like with a town hall, for example, multifunctional. So obviously a town hall is only used maybe a handful of times a year, but being able to utilize that space in some other sort of collaborative setting when it's not being used in a town hall, so that it could be downsized, multi-point connectivity, but trying to not obviously impact the aesthetics too much, because we obviously have to work very closely with architects to make sure it still functions correctly, but it has the form that they're looking for with that. So for us, it's really just about making lots of different spaces that are functional so that people can choose how they work.
So with just going into the sort of like the diversity that you would have, let's say, for example, a town hall as an example, are companies now asking you with regards to things like, I can't say this word, sustainability? Is it a significant concern across industries? And how do you think that the ProAV side of it is contributing to eco-friendly solutions and environmental changes that we are being not forced down, but we are looking to go down at that particular point?
Yeah. I mean, you've hit the nail on the head. It's something that everyone is more mindful of. When you start getting into the details of what's required to understand that sustainability en masse for a project or for a company, it then you have to build a picture of what you're expecting to get out of that piece. Every bid we do, every project we work on, sustainability is a key word. And I think ProAV is driving that in several different ways. One, the manufacturers are far more open about their manufacturing process, how they're recycling during the manufacturing process to take those cut-offs of circuit boards and PCBs and things and back into the process. How they're able to recycle those units afterwards. They're making a lot of the equipment more modular to make repairs more straightforward and therefore less wastage. A lot more stats now available from all the manufacturers of how much power draw, heat dissipation, etc. And obviously they're trying to downsize how much these units are taking on power.
Yeah, I was going to ask you about that actually, with regards to the, originally no one really sort of cared about the power. Now it's become more of a driving factor, due to the fact that the buildings have to be more eco-friendly as well. Are you looking at things with regards to the fact that power consumption is a key or critical factor with regards to ProAV now?
It does, especially depending on how it's being powered. If it's being powered off of a mains connector, that obviously gets brought into the design process. Do we have to have a main socket there? Do we need to have a main socket there? Can we deliver it off of PoE on the network? But then that's a very costly way of powering a device. But if it needs to be connected to the network anyway, actually, it makes sense. We're also seeing clients that are now putting power saving profiles on their switches in order to down ports during, low times of use. So sort of between 8 and 7, let's say, 8 in the evening to 7 in the morning, so that those devices aren't drawing power overnight. And they're then taking stats off of their, MER and SER equipment rooms so that they can understand how that's benefiting the business, what cost saving that is on, return on investment, total cost of ownership, all that good stuff.
Yeah. So sorry, I'm still on the same subject.
No,
with regards to with regards to power and light and heat and everything else, because there's obviously a correlation between, obviously, the amount of heat something puts out with regards to the air conditioning. So you've got this sort of domino effect. Are businesses actually noticing now the more efficient ways that the ProAV technology that we're putting in to B2B, to companies? Are they looking at the benefits rather than, and like you said, the total cost of ownership, rather than, looking at, let's say, for instance, a different manufacturer that isn't that sustainable, rather than, but is more cost, or it's cheaper? Or are they looking at the more expensive version that actually has all of that built in these days? Is that something that is taken into consideration now?
It does seem to be, I would say, on probably about 3/4 of my project. Usually clients want to go for longevity and robustness over cost. They would rather spend another £10,000 or $10,000 in the short term, potentially be able to sweat that asset for 5 to 6 years. And also with the heat, as you say, are they noticing it? We're seeing, especially with centralized ProAV, it's driving down what fresh air needs to be pushed to the meeting rooms, because there's less to cool. Obviously, your screens are dissipating less heat, your equipment's dissipating less heat, so it makes the rooms more manageable, which means we don't have the background noise the same, so there's less drive on sound masking if that's installed, for example. So it is a noticeable benefit. Whether people are quantifying it in any great detail is another question.
Yeah, you're right. That is actually probably another question to ask at some point later this year, or maybe in a year or so's time. Yeah, when people actually are looking at the stats and going, well, this has actually reduced our power consumption bills by X amount of percentage as well, which means that we're now offsetting that against the total cost of ownership.
Yeah, and just to close out that, we're seeing ProAV being paired with things like smart sensors. So not just in a smart building, but with, specialist companies that deliver that view of how good the air quality is, etc. And that they're also able to slot APIs in that tell them about power draw, usage of spaces, which really helps them with businesses on how they look at the next project, or when they come to the end of life in a building, they can go, right, we actually found that we used our town hall once a year, so maybe we outsource that going forward, and and so on. So there is collaboration things slotting in with the ProAV world that help understand that information better.
Oh, cool. So with remote work becoming more prevalent now, and I mean, I don't know about yourself, but I'm sort of 2-3 days in the office, or 2-3 days at home, depending on which. How can the ProAV solutions support effective collaboration among geographically dispersed teams?
Yeah, so I mean, we work in it. A lot of our clients work in that model. We have a flex up, flex down, depending on client commitments and whether we're attending these sorts of events or so on. So, but I think for general day-to-day working, it's really about the platform you're using. You need to find a platform that works for your users en masse, or give them the option for both. I mean, being a consultant, we are able to access an array of those tools, but you may find some of our clients are fixed to a Zoom or a Teams or, WebEx. I think it's user education so that they can get the most out of the platform. If they don't want to be on camera, but they could create an avatar, for example, help with the inclusion piece. It's going back to what we spoke about earlier, which is giving that same experience from home that you would get in the office. Obviously, a lot of these platforms now have, whiteboarding and note-taking in real time. And that's then obviously fed back into the larger ProAV picture, because if you're able to whiteboard at home and then that's coming up on your screen in the office and people are then able to collaborate on that, I think it's about sharing that information in a sensible manner and people understanding what these tools can do to help make their workflows more efficient.
Do you find that you guys are being asked more for that type of either meeting room or town hall or huddle room.
Yes, very much so.
Yeah, I was going to say it must be now. They must be looking, or companies must be looking at reducing down their cost of travel as well, as in air travel or train travel or whichever at that particular point. So it must be a huge benefit to them. Do you ever get to hear about sort of what benefits that your rooms have actually created for the end user at that particular point?
Not as much as we would like. We always try and do a wash up with all our clients at the end of the project, and then try to revisit 3 to 6 months later just to see how things are going, make sure that it's delivered on the design, and that they're getting out of it what was the intention of that space. Quite often we don't really get the feedback. It's just, yeah, great, it's working, it still looks good, people are loving it. And then you normally hear about, we had one day when we needed to do a really important meeting and the camera wasn't tracking faces. But generally, we would prefer more information because it helps us in the future. It helps us learn. It helps us adapt and then take that knowledge, as a lessons learned to another client or to another part of that existing business.
Yeah, it's always good to get either positive or negative feedback with regards to, what you've actually done or how things have worked for the client themselves, or whether they want something slightly different. Because I know a lot of the times that some of the ProAV stuff is put in and they just never use it, or which is unfortunate, but that's what they asked for.
One prime example, actually, that has just sprung to mind. We did a large 75-person boardroom for a client who's based out of the US. We do a number of global projects for them, and it was obviously a very complex AV delivery for that space. It took us about 2 weeks, dedicated resources to set up, and when they finally used it for their annual board meeting, they had all key parties from the US were in that space. And then they had their satellite offices around the UK, around the world, all dialed into that. And they did say that the experience was far superior to something they'd had previously, with the amount of remote parties involved. So that was one example of where we did get some feedback that it worked, the stitching, so that you could see the whole table, that you had the face tracking, the audio tracking. There was a lectern, so when someone was presenting from the lectern, the cameras obviously flipped, and it worked very, very well.
Oh, that's excellent. I mean that that's super news. That that we're being able to bring basically the globe together, without actually having the need to burn fossil fuels to get over, to the Americas or to wherever it actually is. In the financial sector services, what challenges can AV actually help solve to optimize customer interactions and services roughly?
I think a lot of it is this kind of one touch or simple graphical user interfaces, making it very straightforward for people to get into the meeting and get on with the work. Obviously, in financial services and possibly things like legal as well, it's time is money.
Yeah, sorry, I wasn't just specifically going on financial services. Yeah, it was meant
but just as a
generic on it.
It's people don't like it when it doesn't work. You get people very frustrated, and that could be managed via front of house to mitigate that, or it could be that the technology is straightforward, it's robust. We know all this equipment has moved forward so much in the last sort of 5 years to being more straightforward to use, being more reliable. And I think if someone can walk in, press a button, hook their laptop up so they can present, in a lot of cases, that's all they want. If they're using a larger room, like we talked, with a town hall or a boardroom, that would usually be managed via the front of house team. But again, it's bringing people together in the right way to make their workflows that much more straightforward, and that they're getting the maximum out of the time that they're then billing to their clients.
Sure. Yeah. Do you find that and it's just going on to the town hall side of it, do you find that you're being asked more for town halls now, or is it about the same or less?
It's probably about the same, but it's more geared around the space being flexible. So we want to be able to do a town hall once every quarter, and that must be able to hold 150 people. But the rest of the year, we want it to be smaller meeting rooms, or it turns into the cafe or whatever it may be. So you're then, as you well know, you're having to kind of future-proof the area. You're having to make sure you've got all those connectivity points so that there's flex even when it is used in the town hall setup. So it's making the most of those spaces for both from a financial perspective, financially viable to deploy in the first place, but also that space isn't lying dormant during the rest of the year. So, but yeah, I would say it's probably about the same as we had previously.
Oh, okay. I mean, it was just a curiosity question, really, that one.
No, absolutely.
Because I know that due to the fact that we're much more hybrid now than we ever used to be, whether or not it was still being asked for due to the fact we are this hybrid working that we've got, or whether or not it had been, increased to sort of try and entice people back more into the office or not at that point.
Yeah, we have seen a couple of clients where their town hall space is used as an event space. They host a kind of like a gala once every quarter or every 6 months, which is for all staff to attend. Again, to sort of say, oh, look at our office, look what we've just introduced, look at how great this is, and so on, to give that enticement that you mentioned.
Yeah, it's a bit of a difficult one for companies because now, since we've had the pandemic, that trying to get people back into the offices is probably slightly more difficult than it ever used to be, because everyone's got used to being, working from home or working from, I don't know, some coffee shop or wherever at that particular point. So, the enticement back would be, and this is just me thinking, would be something like, we've got this fantastic town hall, which has got a great restaurant attached to it, and we're showing all the stuff that we're now doing, et cetera, and things like that. But like you said, to split it up into smaller, more manageable spaces that can be utilized better, is key. Does that add a bit of complexity from your side with regards to how they switch the ProAV, into these?
Yeah, as you can imagine, most clients want it to be automatic. So when the walls are moved or whatever, it automatically switches into that mode. You always tend to have a manual override just in case. I mean, it's not overly complicated. It's just ensuring that the coordination across the multiple parties are required is in place, because you need it obviously from the integrator, you need it from the consultant, from the design perspective, you need it from the wall construction, etc., etc. So as long as that's all tied up, generally it's not too much of a problem. But it's then obviously the programming that sits behind it to make sure it functions.
The whole thing actually works, and splits apart. Accessibility is essential in public spaces. How does ProAV cater for the needs of disabled individuals or people along those lines? I mean, as you know, I'm deaf, so and promote more of the inclusivity into participation in that. So how do you view that?
Yeah, I think ProAV is really driven forward on this, and has really stepped up. You've always had your induction loops either portable or fixed, but they've gone to the next level now. We're seeing integration with Bluetooth, where people have Bluetooth hearing aids. People obviously with maybe issues walking, wayfinding, so that they're getting the most direct route to where they need to go to. Sort of also then not just for the office you're in, but here's the nearest station, here's where you can go and get a taxi, here's a nearby restaurant, being presented on signage in some capacity so that people are, not having to sort of skirt around. But, also it's about when you're booking, when your guests are being booked in, you're adding additional information about, do you have additional requirements for assistance? And that can be pushed through, maybe a booking system that doesn't specifically sit in the ProAV well, but then makes the room react in a way. For example, the lighting levels might need to be lower, or somebody who's maybe got a neurodiverse condition, the audio needs to be tuned down a bit so that it's not so loud. There's ways now that with automation and the way that ProAV has developed over the last 5 years, you can do a lot of this just by the booking being correct and that information being taken across accordingly. And again, it comes back to that robust idea that we're talking about. It's got to work. So there's obviously a lot of testing goes in for a lot of our clients that want to use this to ensure that it is fit for purpose, that it's going to deliver on what's been promised and make the lives of people that do have additional needs, much easier when they come to an office. They haven't got to wait in security for ages. Somebody already knows that they need a wider gate to go through, or that they need a certain lift type, or whatever it may be.
Yeah, no, that's that makes an awful lot of sense. It also means that the person isn't excluded in any way whatsoever at that particular point, or doesn't feel excluded, or just makes it easier.
There's so much wasted talent. I've read a number of papers on this. There's so much wasted talent because people don't feel that the offices are set up for them, or that, there's limiting factors that would stop them feeling comfortable in that environment. If we can take this technology that's available and push it out and, add features to it that's going to make somebody's life easier, you end up getting the best pick of the talent as well.
No, that's very true, actually. Yeah, very true.
But as you can imagine, one of the hurdles with this sort of system is if you're a tenant on a space and you want to be able to give that seamless experience through the building, then there's that additional coordination of how do we push information between the landlord system and our system. So there's obviously a lot of planning that has to go into that to make sure that it functions appropriately.
Also building into the BMS system, the building management system, or payment management system, or whatever integration that the tenant would have to do into the building at that particular point. Well, fire alarms are a prime example, really, isn't it? And all that. We're sort of coming towards the last question here, Neil. Language barriers can impede communication. I mean, massively, as as I've come across in my lifetime in ProAV. How does ProAV technology bridge the gap for multilingual interactions in diverse settings as well?
I've only seen it a handful of times, and it's getting better every day. Is the use of obviously auto captioning within the likes of the platform we're on at the minute, Teams, Zoom. It's all starting to come there. We're seeing it in the social platforms, and I guess that is driving the ProAV technology forward. I've seen it in a meeting room where they're able to use a kind of a mix of AI and like an assistant to obviously listen to the conversation, push it up onto the screen. Again, going back to harder hearing, you can obviously get that traverse to somebody's...
Almost like sign language, isn't it? I mean...
it is, yeah.
I read...
Hearing aids was the word I was looking for.
Yeah.
I went completely blank. I would say it's not as advanced as it could be, but we are definitely seeing more of an uptake in it. Again, avatars, I mean, that's not so much a language barrier, but maybe someone not feeling like they can be on camera. Obviously, avatars is being trialed a lot in a lot of the platforms at the minute. Again, with other sort of, meta environments and things. But I think for language barriers specifically, it's about translation on the fly, potentially. If you've got someone who maybe doesn't speak English, we're obviously very fortunate that English is generally the utilized language globally. But, I've done a lot in China, and that can be quite difficult. And I actually find with that a lot of the time, if you can follow up from your meeting, whether that be via a whiteboarded session, whether it be through the recording of the meeting like we're doing here, and then those local clients being able to translate that in their own time, or, as I say, auto-generating, translation on the fly. So I think there's a lot to go. I think there's a lot more in the bag to be seen, but it's getting there.
Do you think that with the oncoming AI that's starting to be programmed, much better, that will actually reduce the amounts of misunderstandings that can actually happen?
I think it's possible because it's interpreting what you're saying to a degree. It's not just a like-for-like translation, is it? It's potentially taking that information, it's storing it somewhere, it's then presenting that in a way that it thinks is correct to, based on the various different inputs you've given it. I think it's going to increase the need for meetings being recorded and formally minuted to ensure that if there is any misconstrued information, that can be reviewed later. A bit like obviously call recording on your helplines and things. But yes, I think that's why I don't think it's quite there yet. I think it's getting better, but there's still a lot to go around it. I'd imagine that the information security laws are going to have to change to match it, etc. So
yeah, I think that's going to be key. Actually, is that due to the fact you obviously have to ask permissions to record things and so on and so forth. I think you're right there. I think the especially cross language and also the way that we speak, or the way that the Chinese speak, or the way that the Malays speak, etc., is very different, and things can be misconstrued even when it is being translated at that particular point. It still can be misconstrued. And
absolutely. Well, there's no tone in the translation, is there? So it's very difficult. You don't know whether someone's joking or is being a bit cheeky, or whether they're being deadly serious, and that can have an impact on how the meeting outcome is driven.
So Phil, thank you very, very much for your insight into what we're into the ProAV side of it, and how PTS consultants actually deal with all the new and more innovative ways of building meeting rooms, hybrid rooms, town halls, etc. on that one. I'd just like to say a massive thank you for your time today, sir. I know you've just come back off holiday, so it was an absolute pleasure. Yeah.
No, I appreciate the invite, and it's been fantastic, and I'm glad we got to do it, Pete.
Okay. All right. Thank you very, very much indeed, Phil. Thank you.
No problem.
Take care.
Thanks, Pete.
Bye.
Cheers. Bye.